And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us after a long layoff. Quite a bit has changed around the sports world. Tonight we're going to dig into the NBA playoffs as the field has finally been set. NBA trade deadline has come and gone. Teams have finally sorted themselves out. And here we come down the stretch run to the NBA postseason. It's not quite playoff time yet. They don't consider the play-in to be part of the playoffs. They consider it part of the postseason. It's very interesting as far as how they classify it, as far as how those stats work and all that kind of thing. But we are just about ready for the playoffs to begin. So without further ado, let's dig in. First, we look at the Eastern Conference. Boston's basically run away with that entire conference the entire year, significantly ahead of anybody else in that entire conference. And beyond that, it's kind of a hodgepodge of teams between 2 and 10 as far as who has the best chance to really knock off Boston. On the West side, it's very much more competitive, especially at the top. Came down to the final day, in fact, for the number 1 seed. Oklahoma City Thunder ultimately locking that one down. However, everybody still considers the Denver Nuggets to be the favorite. However, they did lose a couple of nights ago at against the San Antonio Spurs. Wemby really getting a hold of Jokic, and a game that the Nuggets should have won handily. Ultimately, they didn't. Cost them the number 1 seed, and now they're going to be going into the postseason at less than an advantageous position should they get to the conference finals. So let us know in the comments section who you guys have going to the NBA Finals. We'll start in the Eastern Conference side of things. Boston, as I mentioned, has basically run away with that entire conference. Let me pull up the screen for you guys. As you guys can see, Boston, as I mentioned, ran away. They finished 14 games ahead of the Knicks. Knicks actually passed the Milwaukee Bucks for second today. The Knicks basically pulling out all the stops at home against the Chicago Bulls, winning in overtime. Some controversial foul calls in both the fourth quarter and into overtime, allowing Jalen Brunson to get to the line and be able to give them that chance to get to overtime and ultimately win it. Going away in that final frame. So they get the 2 seed. Milwaukee has basically been unable to find their footing, is a nice way to put it, the entire season. You look at the changes they've made in the coaching staff alone, bringing in Adrian Griffin, firing him before they even get to the All-Star game, Doc Rivers ultimately getting that spot, and things haven't worked out with Doc Rivers either. They made the big trade for Damian Lillard. He was thought to kind of be that scorer in the clutch that they really didn't have before. Giannis, of course, is the best player on the team, but the offense was figuring to go through Damian Lillard, at least through at the time of the trade, that he would be able to solve their issues offensively in the fourth quarter. Well, that really hasn't been the case, and the trade they made to get the deal done lost some of their defense in Jrue Holiday. Now, this team certainly didn't have as high of a ceiling as they do now, sure, but they haven't gotten anywhere near the floor that the other team did with Jrue Holiday on this team. So that's why they backslid into the playoffs a little bit, losing multiple games against sub-500 teams that are going to be in the lottery, like the Memphis Grizzlies, like the Washington Wizards, like the Detroit Pistons. It was an ugly stretch of games for the Bucks. They've lost handily today as well on the road against the Orlando Magic. Orlando's played fantastic basketball this entire season as far as from a defensive side of things. Also, offensively, though, they really need to start improving, especially from 3. They just need to get somebody in there who's a ball handler, somebody who can knock down some open shots and really open up the floor a little bit for Banchero and Wagner. So we'll see what they do after the season, but a hell of a run there by Jamal Mosley, who should finish inside the top 3 for Coach of the Year voting as far as I'm concerned. Milwaukee is the 3 seed. 4 is going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers. They had a chance at the 2 going into the day. However, they lost at home against the Charlotte Hornets. Yuck. Um, Going into the season, everybody thought they would be able to get somewhere as far as realizing their issues they had last postseason against the Knicks and the issues they had in that playoff series. Well, coming into the season, they didn't solve those issues. They had a plethora of injuries, and then by force, they had to change the way they used their pieces. And they actually became one of the best basketball teams in the league shortly before the All-Star break, and then their pieces started getting healthier. They went back to what they knew and thought was working best, and ultimately they started to backslide again. They still haven't solved the issue as far as having Mobley and Allen on the floor, having Garland and Mitchell on the floor together. Garland has certainly regressed this year, not worth that max contract they gave him, but they're kind of stuck right now with the team they have going into the postseason, obviously. If I'm the Cleveland Cavaliers, I go back to what worked earlier this season, getting some shooters on the floor, allowing them to kind of space the floor, allowing Mitchell to really be the point guard on that team, and having Allen by himself at that center spot. And when Allen comes out, then you bring in Mobley. Zach Lowe on the Zach Lowe podcast, or on the Low Post podcast, was suggesting that you severely stagger their minutes. I would go as far as to say is don't even have them on the floor together at this point. I mean, it just shows you just how inefficient they are from an offensive side of things with having both of those guys on the floor. A non-shooting non-3-point shooting big is fine for one guy, but having 2 of those guys on the floor together at the same time, they might help you out defensively, but what you're losing on the offensive end just completely negates any advantage that you're getting on the other end of the floor. So we'll see if Bickerstaff is able to solve those issues going into the postseason. 5 is the Orlando Magic. Orlando really like what they did this year, but as I mentioned, they need to bring in a ball handler. Hell of a season for them. Even with the issues Cleveland has, I still think Cleveland's going to be able to handle that series. We'll get into our predictions here shortly, but the Magic, hell of a run. They're going to have some issues as far as having Isaac, whether or not they're going to keep him on the roster or not. They have some free agents that they're going to have to worry about in a year or two. They're going to have to pay some money to these guys, so they need to get a ball handler in there now and to decide if Anthony Black is going to be their long-term solution at that spot or if they're going to trade for a guy like DeJounte Murray or Trae Young. They seem to be one of the teams that's most connected to him along with the LA Lakers. In the 6th spot goes to the Indiana Pacers. They had a fantastic offensive season. Defense was lacking at certain points. They had a midseason trade for Pascal Siakam, giving up 3 first-round picks. Low-value first-round picks, though, as far as the Pacers were concerned. And they absolutely put on a show today against the Atlanta Hawks. Now, granted, it's Atlanta. They don't exactly play great defensive basketball anyway. But any team that puts up 150-plus points in any NBA game is certainly doing some things correctly on that end of the floor. Really like where the Pacers are headed offensively. You look at the matchup themselves, Milwaukee versus Indiana. That's going to be a heck of a boat race out there. I don't think Milwaukee's going to be able to stay in front of Halliburton or any of the other guards that they have on that roster. They have some good shooting bigs there with Siakam, Smith, with Turner. It's going to be a very challenging series for Milwaukee to even get out of that first round. 7-8 seed, the 7-8 play-in game is going to go to the Philadelphia 76ers, who have a healthy Joel Embiid back. Miami Heat are there in the 8th spot. They've been kind of a listless team, is kind of a polite way to put it. They were all kind of waiting for playoff Jimmy to show up, and I'm just not sure that's going to happen this year. I echo the sentiments of pretty much every other reporter out there that just doesn't see the juice on this team. Where is it going to come from? They made the trade for Terry Rozier. Great. He's an improvement over Kyle Lowry, but is it really getting you out of the play-in? Is it getting you out of that first-round matchup against either the New York Knicks or the Boston Celtics? I'm a little hesitant about that one. I'm curious to see if they even get into the playoff portion of things, if they're going to get bounced by, say, the Philadelphia 76ers in that 7-8 game, and then bounced again by the winner of the Bulls and Hawks game. Speaking of that Bulls and Hawks game, Bulls finish in that 9 spot, well behind the Miami Heat for that 8 seed positioning. A lot has been made about how far back in the standings they are. As far as I'm concerned, the regular season is 82 games, and you play your schedule. Now, sure, the Miami Heat finished several games ahead of them in the standings. I know Chris Haynes of NBA on TNT and of the This League Uncut anyway podcast, he was really adamant about Miami basically having to do away with the play-in portion of things. They should just lock things up just based on how far the Bulls and Hawks were from them. I get what he's trying to say as far as the regular season counting mattering more for Miami because how far they were ahead of them. You still have to play your schedule though, and I'm not saying that Miami is a significantly better or worse team than the Bulls or Hawks, but I am saying you play your schedule, you finish the schedule, you knew the stakes coming into the year. If you didn't want to be in the play-in range, play better basketball. Now, sure, the big gap there is a little bit disconcerting from just a looking at it visually perspective, but that's all it is. There's no real harm here. If Miami's the better team, they should be able to thump either one of those teams who make it out of that 9-10 game. I don't think they are better. I think they lucked into several of those wins, and I would be shocked if Miami wasn't at least taken down to the wire in this play-in tournament. So we'll see if Miami's able to get out of that play-in range. 9 game, the Chicago Bulls, they played fantastic against the New York Knicks today. Some foul trouble down the stretch there really cost them the game against the New York Knicks. Knicks were turning over the ball left and right and just weren't able to overcome Jalen Brunson and that New York Knicks team. They are fantastic. DiVincenzo certainly has found a home there in New York as well. They look like a really good team. But the Bulls, DeMar DeRozan, one of the best clutch players in the NBA, get him into a one-game playoff situation like this against the Atlanta Hawks. Anything can happen. Same thing if they go on to face either the 76ers or Heat in that 8-seed game. Atlanta Hawks, they finally got Trae Young back and healthy. They will likely trade one of Trae Young or DeJounte Murray after the season, but for right now, they're hoping to kind of surprise some teams, and Atlanta's gotten pretty far in the playoffs before because of this play-in. So they're the team that's most experienced in this play-in tournament. I would not be surprised if they win the 9-10 game and then ultimately beat either the 76ers or Heat in that 8-seed game. So just because they finish further back in the standings, you still have to play your schedule, still have to play your play-in game, and get the job done. So we'll see who gets the job done there. On the Western Conference side of things, Oklahoma City Thunder thumped the Dallas Mavericks today, who were without 8 of their players today. They basically started a G League roster, honestly. Tim Hardaway Jr. is probably the longest tenured vet on the roster, along with Dwight Powell, that actually played any significant minutes in this game. Other than that, they were going with a bunch of young guys, and they should be thumped by the Oklahoma City Thunder when you're going with a lineup like that. As far as Oklahoma City is concerned, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander needed to get right in this game. He looked better, don't get me wrong, but he's not been the same Shai Gilgeous-Alexander we saw for basically 3 to 4 months of the season. That's why I think Luka Doncic, who really kind of played significantly better, especially over the last 4 or 5 months of the season, really elevated his level of play and passed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in my eyes for that MVP race. I still think Jokic ultimately gets the job done as far as winning the MVP. I don't think there's really too big of a contest there. But I would not be surprised if Luka finishes easily in that second place spot in the entire league for MVP. But Oklahoma City Thunder, they're going to have some issues with size once they get into the postseason. Depending on how their matchup falls with that 8 seed, they could even be bounced in the first round. They are a good 1 seed, but the West is extremely strong, and I don't see them necessarily having a cakewalk to getting into the second round. Denver, they had the inside track on that number 1 seed, ultimately losing it on Friday night to the San Antonio Spurs and Wemby there. Jokic, as I mentioned, is the MVP candidate, but they haven't exactly played great basketball this year. They certainly turned things up a little bit after the All-Star break, started playing much better basketball, but I still don't think they're on the level that they were last year. I still have my doubts as to whether or not the Nuggets are truly the best team in the West. There are several teams that are very good, but I'm just not sure the Nuggets are head and shoulders above anybody out west right now. They certainly have possibly one of the top 2 players in the entire league, absolutely, when you consider Doncic and Jokic there. But I'm just not sure that their bench is going to be able to live up to the hype. They really went young with that bench this year. They really kind of went with a youth movement there to try to keep this team together as long as possible. They played well, but those rims start to get a little smaller. You start to shoot that thing in the regular season, starts to get like a beach ball after a while. That thing's going to feel like a marble by the time they get to game 1 in the playoffs, and we'll see how they get through things. I'm not sold on Denver being that clear cut ahead of everybody else in the West, especially when you consider their issues that they've had trying to close things out down the stretch. Minnesota Timberwolves, same kind of issues there. They've had some issues closing things out down the stretch. They're getting Karl Anthony Towns back. They played against the Phoenix Suns today at home and lost. They got thumped anyway on their own court, and they open up their series against the Phoenix Suns as well. So maybe they just like the matchup, whatever the case may be. But that's who their playoff matchup's going to be. And you're looking at Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. If they're able to figure things out, which it looked like they played really great basketball against one of the best defensive teams in the entire NBA today in the Minnesota Timberwolves, they could easily be bounced in the first round as well. As I mentioned, the first three teams here were all vying for the number one seed at the beginning of the day, but ultimately, all three of them are going to have a tough road getting to the conference finals, let alone the NBA finals. The West is absolutely loaded as opposed to the East. 4 seed goes to the Clippers. If you had asked me the question of who's the best team in the West, who's the best team to challenge the Denver Nuggets and make it to the NBA Finals, I would have told you guys the Clippers around February. However, things have gone very poorly for them since. Injury issues have crept back in there. There's some animosity on that team with PJ Tucker all season. There's been some animosity in the locker room as well, whether or not Paul George really fits with this team long term. Does he have issues with Kawhi now? There's been rumblings coming out of LA for the better part of 4 months. James Harden usually is good the first year whenever he gets somewhere. This is his first year, but his numbers have backslid over the last month as well. And things don't seem quite as harmonious as they did a couple of months ago in La La Land. So Kawhi Leonard is out with right knee issue. Doesn't seem like it's going to keep him out of this series, but it's another knee issue for Kawhi Leonard. They're going to need him to be the 2021 version of Kawhi Leonard that shot 62% from the floor, 50% from three, 32 points per game in the series against the Dallas Mavericks. That's the version of Kawhi they're going to need in order to defeat the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Dallas isn't necessarily the offensive juggernaut they were back then. They were one of the best offensive teams in the league in 2021. Pace and all those kinds of things. Efficiency, they were the model of efficiency offensively in the entire NBA. Now they are a defense-first team after the trade deadline. Everybody poo-pooed their trade, saying, you gave up too much for P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. Well, it remains to be seen whether or not they gave up too much. But for right now, they significantly improved their defense. Top 5 defense in the entire NBA after the trade deadline. Obviously, today, they basically didn't play their entire roster. And so, don't count today against them as far as I'm concerned. I do have some issues as far as the back end of that roster, their future pieces they're counting on, like Jaden Hardy. But you look at what the Clippers are going to have to face in Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and a defense-first Mavericks team. They're going to have their hands full. James Harden's had his injury issues down the stretch. Let us know in the comments section if you think Kawhi is going to be healthy for the series, if you think things are going to blow up on the bench for the Clippers. They've got a lot of issues going on their own before they even get to one of the hottest teams in the entire NBA, the 5 seed Dallas Mavericks. For Dallas, they basically sat Luka and Kyrie the last couple of games, basically sat their entire rotation going into today's game as well, trying to get some rest, make sure that those guys are healthy going into the postseason. They're going to have a little bit of time off, of course, with the play-in going on. They absolutely lit a fire under themselves after they made those trades for Daniel Gafford and P.J. Washington. And Luka was the guy that was the driving force behind those trades. Nico Harrison, of course, got the job done, but Luka wanted to improve this team. He wanted a rim-running center, and now he's got 2 of them. Derek Lively should be back for the postseason as well. Excuse me, for the playoffs as well. Derek Lively, unfortunately, had some little bit of an injury about 2 weeks ago. He seems to be recovered from that. But just as he was about to return to the lineup, sadly, his mother passed away right before tip-off on, I believe it was Friday, and hearts go out to him and his family. He had just spoken to the team about the situation he was going through, and then basically as they were taking the court, he got the call that his mother had passed away. So, thoughts are with you, Derek Lively. Hope you have a great, playoff run in your first season here with the Dallas Mavericks, and hopefully that'll help you get through, everything that you're going through. So, in case you guys are new here, we cover pretty much all 4 of the major sports out there: NBA, NFL, MLB, and the NBA, of course. And we've been absent from you guys for a little while now. We had a lot of sickness here. You can still hear it in my voice anyway. So if you guys hear me, lose my voice for a second there, please bear with me. But it's been too long. I wanted to get back to doing some lives with you guys and having some fun. Talked about a lot of basketball last time we were live. We're going to get into some baseball tomorrow night. And just want to say thank you guys for your patience. Mark, I know you sent me a few messages through our Facebook. Appreciate the support. And thank you guys for joining us once again. Um, had some issues on our own family with some very similar situations to Derek Lively. And really can feel what he's going through right now. So, wishing him and his family the best. As far as the Mavericks go, going into the playoffs, they have a really good guard in Dante Exum. Who would have thought that coming into the season, Dante Exum would have played as well as he did for Dallas? Basically shot 40+% all year from three. Was one of the clutch players for them down the stretch, getting big baskets against the Sacramento Kings to really knock them into oblivion the remainder of the season. Derek Jones Jr., really a great unheralded signing for the Dallas Mavericks. Those are the two primary defenders on ball for the Mavericks. Then that allows P.J. Washington to be that second defender. And then they have their two rim protectors there that they'll play roughly 24 minutes per night for each one of those. They still have Maxi Kleba to kind of throw a curveball at teams at the 5 if they need to. But P.J. Washington will probably have him as his primary backup in Maxi there at the 4 going into the playoffs. Now, Clippers have had issues against size this season. Clippers have had their issues with Luka Doncic for years as far as being able to contain him. So one issue that I've seen brought up with Luka by multiple NBA reporters is that the strategy for teams going into a playoff series against the Dallas Mavericks is, hey, send two guys at Luka, force the ball out of his hands, and we'll live with whatever happens after that. Basically, you give up a little bit less per possession anyway, points per possession anyway, if you force the ball out of Luka's hands. That was the book to defend the Mavericks in the postseason over the last couple of years. Well, that's no longer the case. They have Kyrie Irving, possibly one of the best shot makers in NBA history, on this team. He can easily take over a ball game all by himself. Jalen Brunson was a very good player for the Dallas Mavericks at one point, but he was a non-factor for that big run that they had to the Western Conference Finals. He was basically on the bench for a significant portion of that. It was basically Trey Burke, it was Seth Curry. That was the group that really got them into that conference final back then. Jalen Brunson wasn't the player that he was today, or that he is today for the New York Knicks. And now, Dallas would, I'm sure, love to have Jalen Brunson, but I still think Kyrie Irving is a better shot maker. And when you have Doncic as your primary ball handler, having that epic ability to be able to knock down shots in a tough game is exactly what the Mavericks needed on this team. Now, they aren't necessarily as good offensively as they have been over the last several years. They still need to improve that area, and they certainly have over the past couple of weeks. Maybe they've solved the issues as far as offense goes for P.J. Washington. He had a tough game in his return to Charlotte, but outside of that, he's put up over 30 points in a couple of games for the Mavericks now. He's averaging, I believe, around 15 points a game, 16 points a game for Dallas. The center position basically is averaging about 20 to 25 points a game right now for Dallas. That's basically their third scorer, if you will, that 5 position. Luka absolutely loves throwing lobs to either Gafford or Lively, and they are far more athletic than they ever have been with the Dallas Mavericks. I've been watching the Mavericks basically since I can remember. I've never seen them this athletic. All those years with Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk was a great player. In fact, right behind this green screen, I have a big old canvas of him up on my wall anyway, of him holding the MVP for the NBA Finals and the Larry O'Brien Trophy, which is what this is all about. And he was absolutely fantastic. But one thing he was not was nearly as athletic or as any one of the guys on the roster for Dallas right now. He was fantastic as far as his motor, his drive, his will to win. But ultimately, it's about, right now for Dallas, the athleticism they have surrounded Luka Doncic with. The most athletic player the Mavericks had before him might be Gerald Green, Brandon Wright. Right now, you're looking at guys like P.J. Washington, Derek Jones Jr., Derek Lively, all more athletic than most players they've ever had on this roster, and that's a great sign for them in the future. Looking at the Phoenix Suns, they're in the 6th spot. They thumped the Timberwolves today. I think there's a chance that the Phoenix Suns could emerge out of that first round matchup against Minnesota because the issues they present to the Timberwolves. This is a young team, really hasn't done anything in the postseason for years. We're looking at Anthony Edwards kind of taking that next step to be one of the top 10 players in the NBA. I think he's already there. Rudy Gobert's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year in the NBA. Karl Anthony Towns is fantastic, and this team is going to have massive salary issues going forward. But for right now, it's going to be a tough sledding for them in a first-round series against Phoenix, a team that they just struggled to close out. They could have easily had the 2 seed going into the postseason and had home court in that second round. Ultimately, they laid an egg today, and they're just young. I thought they could use a little bit more ball handling. I'm not sure how much I trust Mike Conley to still be able to perform at necessarily a high enough level. He's still a great player, but when you look at the other guards he's going to be going up against in the playoffs this year, and I just don't think they're going to have an advantage at that spot in any one of those games. Looking at the 7 seed, the New Orleans Pelicans finally have Brandon Ingram back. He is going to be trouble for whoever gets him in that first round. I think they'll easily get out of that play-in round, so don't worry about that one if you're a Pelicans fan. They have McCollum healthy, Zion's healthy, Ingram is healthy. They have all their horses ready to go. Herb Jones is healthy, Valanciunas is ready to go. Trey Murphy is back and healthy and knocking down shots, being a great defender. This is a loaded team. They're going to have some issues as far as the 5 position. They're going to have some issues for payroll concerns going forward. They're a team that has never paid the tax. They are not going to pay the tax, so I'd expect them to try to trade one of their pieces on the roster. They're not going to be able to afford Trey Murphy. If they don't, or if they decide to trade Trey Murphy, they could flip him for other assets. They could use a point guard, don't get me wrong. Jose Alvarado's a good backup point, but they're basically running the offense through C.J. McCollum, Zion, and Brandon Ingram. Basically, your turn, your turn, your turn basketball. And while I think it's a good team overall, I still think there's more there for them to get to. There's a higher ceiling for them to get to if they solve their position issues after the season. But going into the playoffs, I really like their positioning, really like the challenges they could give a team like the Denver Nuggets or Oklahoma City Thunder. Their size at the 3-4 position is going to overwhelm whoever they end up playing. I know Denver is really good defensively when you look at Aaron Gordon and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but I just really like the pieces that the Pelicans can throw at those two guys and forcing Jokic to play out on the perimeter more than he's ever used to. So we'll see if they can do something in the postseason. Looking at the LA Lakers, who basically were playing in that 9-10 range for the majority of the season, they really solved things over the last couple of weeks. In fact, since the All-Star break, they've been a top 5 team in the entire NBA. Don't look now, but LeBron is still healthy, AD is still healthy, and they really have improved their core over the last couple of years. You look at the trades they made last year, bringing in some depth pieces. Then this year, they don't make a move, but bring in Spencer Dinwiddie, improves their guard rotation. I really like how LA is coming into the postseason. Now, anytime you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis on your roster, you can do damage in the postseason. And the Oklahoma City Thunder are small. Playing with a bigger lineup against the Oklahoma City Thunder team could lead to their advantage. And it is the playoffs. You're talking about LeBron James and all the playoff experience he has versus a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder or like the Denver Nuggets. I really like the way the Lakers are set up going into the postseason. It was a 4-game sweep last year for the Nuggets against the Lakers, but it was one of the tougher 4-game sweeps that we've seen. I think the Lakers could give Denver a run for their money, but I still think the Lakers will ultimately face the OKC Thunder in that first round. I think the Pelicans will beat the Lakers in the first game of the play-in anyway. And even though the Lakers just beat the Pelicans on their home floor, I don't think they can do it 2 games in a row. Love you, LeBron, but I just think the Pelicans are too good and they're finally healthy. Another game back in the lineup for Brandon Ingram should do him wonders. And Lakers against Thunder would be a great first-round matchup. Now, in the 9-10 spot, 9, we have the Sacramento Kings. A little bit of a mash unit. They don't have Herter. Monk got hurt. This is a team that really doesn't have anything going for it right now. Sabonis had that huge double-double streak of over 50 games snapped recently. This is a team basically flying without a rudder right now. They don't really have any direction. If they still had those pieces, Herter, Monk on the floor, I could believe they could upset somebody in this play-in, possibly sneak in, maybe even a surprise one of those top 2 teams. But right now, I don't think there's a prayer of it. going up against Steph Curry in a playoff or in a play-in game. I just don't see how they're going to stop him. Keon Ellis, by the way, is a name you've never heard of. He's really kind of taken up the minutes that have been left by Herter. He's a great two-way player. Davion Mitchell was expected to be a great point guard for them. After they traded Tyrese Halliburton to bring in Domantas Sabonis, Mitchell was the guy everybody wanted on their roster because he was going to be that next great player, the next great guard to come out of that out of that Sacramento Kings lineup, and it just hasn't worked. Keon Ellis has been a better player, is a better shooter, significantly better defender right now, and Davion Mitchell is still a great defender, but Ellis just brings more to the table. If you're a Kings fan, you already know the name, but if you're not a Kings fan, keep your eyes peeled for the future of Keon Ellis and what he could bring to that Kings team. But for right now, they're just a little undermanned offensively. Sabonis is a great double-double machine, but he's never really assertive offensively. He averages, 13, 15 points a game, not anywhere close to over 20 a game like I was hoping he would do. I was hoping he would do after the trade. Ultimately, it didn't get done. In fact, I think a trade of De'Aaron Fox would have been better for them because Tyrese Halliburton has really elevated his play, and we see how great of a player he is for the Pacers right now. But you look at this Sacramento Kings team, and there's just not a lot of juice left there. For the Golden State Warriors, what an up-and-down season they've had. Assistant coach passed away. They've had Draymond Green be indefinitely suspended, multiple ejections. Just Steph Curry even looked human for about 20, 25 games of the season. They eke their way into the postseason. Houston finishes 11, I believe, in the West. But you look at the Golden State Warriors, it's all about whether or not Klay Thompson and Steph Curry can knock down their shots. If they're able to do that, they easily pass the Kings, and they possibly can win into that or get into that 8 seed and take on the Thunder. I mean, that's a championship team, championship pedigree. Draymond gets away with a lot on the floor, and I mean a ton. Refs are extremely lenient with him, and he still has the issues that he has. It just might be too little too late. If they were in the 7-8 spot, maybe with a home crowd, all that kind of thing, they might have something going for themselves. They do play extremely well on the road this year. Was not the case last year. You could talk me into it just because Steph Curry is there. But right now, I think they win the 9-10 game and then get trounced by the LA Lakers. Alrighty, let's get over to the prediction side of things, shall we? Bear with me for just a moment. You're going to see the screen change here. Please ignore. See if I can do this correctly for you guys. Here it is. Let me fix this so you guys can see it. Alrighty. Let me pop this up on my screen now. So when you look at the NBA playoffs this year, this is kind of your bracket right here. OKC is the one. As I mentioned, they face the winner of the 7-8, or they would face the the loser of the 7-8 game and the winner of the 9-10 game in the West. So we'll start there. Who's going to win these games? All right. So first, looking at the 7-8 matchup. See if I can edit this. Well, might not let me anymore. Had all this set up for you guys. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to let me edit anymore. Alright. We'll just go through the descriptions here anyway. First, the Pelicans and the Lakers. We'll put the Pelicans in that 7 seed. I think they'll go up against the Denver Nuggets. I think they'll give Denver all they can handle in that series. So, Lakers will then face the winner of the 9-10 game. I think the Warriors ultimately win that one. It'll be LeBron versus Steph for the final spot. Out west, the winner will face the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think the Lakers win that one going away. I think Steph's had a great run there in Golden State, but I think they ultimately are going to come up a little bit short against Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and crew. Lakers ultimately get into postseason in that 8th seed. Alrighty, so on the on the Eastern Conference side of things, 7-8, Really like the 76ers this year. In fact, I would love for them to face the Boston Celtics in round one. Ultimately, though, I just think they're too good of a team. They will ultimately slide into that 7 spot. They will face the New York Knicks. Then it'll be Miami versus the winner of the Hawks and Bulls. Give me the Hawks in that one. I think the Hawks, they absolutely did not play well against the Indiana Pacers today. But I really like DeJounte Murray. I really like what they're doing in Chicago as well. But I just think this team is too good offensively, as far as the Atlanta Hawks, for the Bulls to really be able to hang around. I think the Bulls have some good pieces. I just don't think they're going to go anywhere this year. They need to sort out what they're going to do long term. I'm not sure DeRozan is going to be there for much longer either. Hawks ultimately advance. Heat versus Hawks. Who ultimately wins that one? I just don't see playoff Jimmy coming back. I just don't. They're just too offensively challenged there again with the Miami Heat, and same story against the Chicago Bulls. Hawks offense just too good, even with their lack of defense. So give me the Atlanta Hawks to get into that 8 seed. Not that I think it matters a whole heck of a lot. You look at the Boston Celtics and the year they had, they were absolutely fantastic. I just have issues with their late game management, what they're going to do. They seem to play a lot of my turn, your turn basketball with Tatum and Brown instead of including Drew Holiday or Kristaps Porzingis or Derek White in any of their action once they get under 5 minutes in a close game. We've seen them give up some big-time leads over the last couple of weeks as well. I just don't think they're going to get pushed, though, by either, the Miami Heats of the world or the Hawks of the world or the Bulls. So give me a gentleman's sweep there. Boston moves on to the second round. 4-5 matchup, Cleveland versus the Orlando Magic. Told you guys earlier, I think it's been a fantastic year for Orlando. Love their defense. It's going to be a low-scoring series, mainly because Cleveland kind of gave away things as we got later in the season. They just decreased their efficiency on the offensive end, and I think they're going to solve those issues, or at least solve them enough to get past Orlando. Orlando just doesn't have enough scoring. They need to bring in a guard, a ball-handling guard, somebody who can knock down some threes. They will be a significantly better team next year than they are right now. But heck of a year for them. Give me Cleveland in that matchup. Milwaukee versus Indiana. First upset here, really. It's going to be the Pacers, and I don't think it's going to be a heck of a close series. But I'll go ahead and say 6 games right now. I think Indiana's going to win it on their home floor. I really like the way Indiana's been playing recently. Their defense is at times atrocious, but you look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Where's their defense been? I mean, it's been absent all year long. They've tried improving it in different ways. Giannis is still a great player, and he can be a great defender at times. I just don't think they're going to be that good in a postseason series against Halliburton, who finally looks to have a spring in his step once again. He has not looked like the same Halliburton that we saw pre-injury, but I still think the further he's gotten away from it, the better he's looked. Love Miles Turner. I love the direction of this team. They're a very deep team as well. They're young, so that's going to be their only issue when they get to the postseason. Meanwhile, Milwaukee has a bunch of playoff vets, but they haven't solved any of their issues. I still love the addition of Damian Lillard for them, and if they can make things click, they're trouble, but they haven't been able to do so far in 82 games. There's nothing that leads me to believe that they're going to solve things here either. Then we get to the 2-7 matchup. It's going to be Knicks versus 76ers. Another surprise for you guys. I'm going to have the 76ers defeating the New York Knicks. Sorry, Jalen Brunson. I love you as a former Maverick. The loss of Randall for them, a secondary ball handler, someone for the offense to flow through besides Brunson, kind of take the pressure off of him in a postseason series, is really what that team needs to get past a team like the 76ers, who, without Joel Embiid, look like a lottery team. With Joel Embiid, they look like a top 2 or 3 team in the East. That's how big of an impact Joel Embiid has. That's how good of a team they are when he's on the floor. Give me some Joel Embiid. On the Western Conference side of things, OKC versus the Lakers. This is going to be a tough matchup. OKC, they don't seem like a traditionally young team that finishes high in the standings and ultimately struggles in the postseason. They're by far 2 years younger than any other team to finish atop their conference in NBA history, I believe. They look absolutely fantastic as far as the way their future is lined up, all the picks they have for their future. They didn't solve their biggest issue, though, at the trade deadline, which is size. And size is something the Lakers have that can give them some trouble. Now, can Anthony Davis and LeBron James stay healthy for the entire series? Another big issue for them. But for Oklahoma City, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is still a great player. He's going to finish in the top 3 of the MVP voting. I would probably say third, behind Jokic and Doncic. This series is going to go at least 6 games. Oh, this is going to be a tough one. In a shocker, I'm going to take LeBron James and the LA Lakers to defeat the Oklahoma City Thunder in round 1. I don't think this is going to be a popular pick. I think this is everybody basically going to be saying, you're a LeBron James homer. He's past his prime. Past his prime, LeBron is still better than at least 95, 97% of the entire league. Anthony Davis is still, when healthy, is one of the best players on the planet. Chet Holmgren is going to look like a baby brother to him on the floor in a playoff series. The Lakers are going to get away with a lot of hand checking in the postseason as well. And while the Thunder are still a very good defensive team, they're small. They are so small. And that's the issue I think they're going to run into. I love Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they've had a great season. I think this is a little bit of a disrespect to take them to be bounced in the first round by an aging team that was in the play-in range for the entire season. So that's where I think the disrespect comes in for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I just think the Lakers are going to be able to defeat them in a 7-game series. Give me the Lakers in 6. If it goes 7, I could see Oklahoma City Thunder pulling this one out. But I just think LeBron is going to figure out a way to get the job done. 4-5, you guys know I'm a Mavericks fan. You guys know I'm going to pick Dallas. Let's break down the series a little bit first, though. Kawhi is going to be coming back from injury. Harden's going to be coming back from injury. Paul George could be leaving after the year. Luka absolutely torches any of the bigs that the Clippers put on the floor. Mavericks are going to play big with Lively and Gafford on the floor, and they are going to play bully ball for once against a playoff or against any team in the postseason. They've never been able to be the bully in a playoff series ever since I've been watching them. They're going to be able to push around the LA Clippers, and the Clippers certainly have some good wings, don't get me wrong. Russell Westbrook is good at that point guard spot for them. But I just don't think they're going to be able to have enough to overcome Luka and Kyrie Irving and the size of the Mavericks. Mavericks are very big right now. They're very long at all of their positions right now. Luka Doncic is what, 6'7", 6'8"? I mean, he's a thick 6'7", 6'8" as well. None of the guys that are in that starting lineup are small. You get to the bench, then you get to finally some guys who might be a little smaller that they might be able to take advantage of some of their wings, like a Dante Exum. But Exum's going to primarily be on ball against probably James Harden. I just don't think that the Clippers have enough if Kawhi doesn't go supernova. If Kawhi pulls off what he did in 2021, they could very easily be right there with the Mavericks. But I just think Dallas has played so well down the stretch. 16-2 before they finally sat down Luka and Kyrie for these final 2 games. They're finally going to be able to rest up and heal up. We saw after Luka won that game the other night, a few nights ago anyway, one thing that he was asked by the reporters, what's one thing you could wish for as you get ready for the postseason? Some days off was his one request. And Jason Kidd, the front office, took that loud and clear, sat him down. There was at one point in a couple of games, he was bleeding literally from both of his knees through multiple pads that he had on his knees. That's how worn down he had become, how much contact that he takes throughout the season. You hear about Luka and the whining for the foul calls. I get it. Sometimes he's completely out of his mind for wanting a foul call. But he absolutely gets hammered multiple times without getting foul calls. I mean, he broke his dang nose this year without a foul call. 3 Mavericks this year broke their dang noses without any fouls being called at any point on any opposing player. Mavericks have a new level of toughness, and Luka gritted through all of that. He had Achilles soreness, ankle soreness, knees. Both of them were kind of jacked up towards the end of the season. Having about 5, 6, 7 days off here really going to allow him to heal up, and he's never been one to take a long time to heal either. He is going to be something special against the Clippers, and I just don't think the Clippers are ready for the tidal wave that is coming their way. How long is this series going to go? Series is going to start out in LA. We've seen this series happen 3 times now, or this will be the 3rd time anyway. And we saw one series, literally every single team won the road game up until the final game of that series, where the Clippers won in dramatic fashion in Game 7. I was actually in LA for that game. Um, that was brutal. If you're a Mavericks fan, you guys remember it. And I think Luka's ready to give them a taste of their own medicine. And we'll see, what Luka has in store. I'm going to go Dallas in 6. I don't think it's quite a gentleman's sweep. I think they could. I just don't think that they'll do it in 5. I think I'll give some extra credit to Kawhi Leonard being able to stay healthy for the series. I just don't think he's going to be the Kawhi from 2021. 3-6, Minnesota versus the Phoenix Suns. This is a series that's easily going to go 7 games. I think Minnesota is going to be given all they can handle by the triumvirate of Durant, Booker, and Beal. The size, though, I think is ultimately going to overwhelm the Phoenix Suns. Give me the Timberwolves by a little in Game 7. So Rudy Gobert, I think, is going to be able to lock things down, and I think Timberwolves will move on in the playoffs. In the 2-7 matchup, Nuggets versus the Pelicans. Nuggets have been the favorite in the West all year long. I don't see any reason to change that. However, the Pelicans are going to give them all they can handle. What kind of series do I expect? I'm expecting this one to go 7. That's right. The team that was expected to be the favorite in the Western Conference, the best team, the team that could win it out of the West, I expect to go 7 in a first-round matchup against a Zion Williamson-led team that's never been to the postseason. Now, C.J. McCollum's, of course, been in the postseason before. Larry Nance has been in the postseason before. But the general core of this team has not been there together. And I think they're going to give them all they can handle at that 2-3-4 spot. I think Jokic is going to get in foul trouble in a couple of these games because they're going to pull him away from the basket. He may even have to guard Zion, and I think that's an absolute mismatch for them. I think Zion's going to go to another level. We've never really seen Zion, with this level of pressure in a game before. We saw him in the in-season tournament. Did not go well. And I think he's looking for a little bit of redemption. This team needs to prove something to David Griffin in that front office as to what this team is going to look like. Should they keep the team intact and possibly add around the edges? Manage their payroll a little bit? Do they keep Trey Murphy? A lot of big-time questions coming for the Pelicans, but I think the Nuggets ultimately get it done in 7. Second round matchup, we're going to have the LA Lakers versus the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas has had the number of the Lakers now since Luka has come to the NBA, but it is LeBron James, it is Anthony Davis. The Lakers and Clippers, of course, share an arena for the finals. This is the final year they'll share an arena, I believe, this year. So the Mavericks are already familiar with playing in Crypto now, not Staples anymore, but Crypto.com arena. And I think Luka is absolutely going to handle business against the Lakers. I think this one's a little bit more of a gentleman's sweep. I think the Mavericks have the size to be able to handle the Lakers. Meanwhile, I think the deficiencies at the point guard and 2-guard spot for the Lakers start to become more apparent against the combination of Kyrie and Luka. Now, you look at LeBron James, I think he's going to still have a good series. I don't think he's going to be absolutely over the moon fantastic, because he's going to have some tough tough matchups anyway on the offensive end of the floor versus Derrick Jones Jr. and P.J. Washington. I think LeBron's still going to get his, don't get me wrong, but I don't think we're going to see 40 burgers every single game out of LeBron, which is what it's going to take in order for them to advance. And I think that he gets one great game, one 40-burger game, but other than that, I think the Mavericks take care of business and roll once again to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in 3 years. 3 or 4 years, whatever it is. All right, then we get to the Timberwolves and Nuggets matchup. We saw this game in Minnesota recently. Nuggets really took advantage of the Timberwolves, won a close game late, and this is where I think the fairy tale ride comes to an end for the Timberwolves. Timberwolves are my second favorite team. I do believe the Nuggets are just that good, though. They need better playmaking. If you're a Timberwolves fan, they're going to have some issues financially after this season. If they had a better, playmaking guard on this roster right now, better than Mike Conley, I would probably pick them to be right there with Denver. But right now, I think we're looking at a, gentleman's sweep here, in 5 games here. Tell you what, I'll give them 6. I'll say the Nuggets in 6. So we'll be left with the Dallas Mavericks versus the Denver Nuggets for the Western Conference Finals. Let's go over to the Eastern Conference. We had Boston defeating the Hawks in round 1 rather handily. We had Cleveland defeating the Orlando Magic. Another series that's going to go quickly here. Boston, I think, is going to easily be able to handle Cleveland. We've mentioned the issues Cleveland has. They kind of went away from a lineup that worked because they had some guys get back healthy. For some reason, they're still relying too much on Mobley and Allen on the floor together, and that's going to be their undoing. Not enough shooting on the floor to be able to combat the talent that's on the floor opposite them in Boston. So give me Boston. I'll take this one in 5 as well. Boston basically rolling through the first 2 rounds here. Honestly, I could see either one of those being a 4-game sweep, but we'll give it 5 games, 4-1 the final there. We had the Pacers defeating the Bucks in round 1. We also had the 76ers defeating the Knicks in round 1. So Pacers versus 76ers. I think Joel Embiid is going to be the difference here. I think Miles Turner is going to be overshadowed here by Embiid. Foul trouble issues, shot making for the Pacers is going to get a little tougher the longer we go into the postseason. Rim's going to get a little tighter on them. And I think this is where things start to, cause them trouble defensively, where their offense starts to wane and their defensive issues start to come to the forefront against a truly great player in Joel Embiid. And I think Embiid is going to be able to lift the 76ers out of this matchup. I am going to say it goes at least 6 games, though. I still think the offense is going to be able to catch fire a couple of times there in Indianapolis. I just think the 76ers are too good of a team with Joel Embiid on the floor. Maxey elevates with Joel Embiid on the floor. Harris elevates with Joel Embiid on the floor. And we have yet to see what Buddy Hield looks like on the floor with Joel Embiid. And going up against his former team, I'm sure Hield is going to have some extra magic for them as well. So it should be a fantastic series to watch, but give me the 76ers in 6. Boston versus the 76ers for the Eastern Conference Finals. This is the matchup I really was hoping to see in round 1. I was hoping Philly would get that 8 spot, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Embiid is going to give Boston everything they could possibly handle, and this is where we're going to learn about the Boston Celtics. Do they have what it takes down the stretch against a team like Philadelphia with Joel Embiid healthy? I still think they do. I think Joel Embiid is going to be, healthy, rolling at this point in the postseason. He's going to be well past his injury at this point. I just think Boston has too good of a lineup that they're going to force themselves to figure out their late game issues by spreading the ball around. They seem to play differently in the final 5 minutes of any close game than they do in any other situation. They just go back to what they've done in the past. It's gone to Jason Tatum one possession, Jaylen Brown another possession. And while I think Jaylen Brown is significantly better this year, I still think they need to play better team basketball once they get into crunch time. And they haven't shown that they have the ability to do that yet, at least down in crunch time. They have the players, they have the talent to be able to get it done, but they have yet to execute in those situations. But I think this is the situation where they're just too talented. Having some failures against the 76ers, I'm sure they'll lose a couple of close games, and Boston media will be all over them. But give me Boston in 7. I think that series is going to be absolutely fantastic. Boston moves on to the NBA Finals. On the Western Conference side of things, this is the matchup we were kind of all hoping for as we got closer to the end of the season. Denver versus Dallas, the 2 best, hottest teams down the stretch in the West. Who's going to take it home? You have Jokic, the favorite for MVP. Luka probably finishes second in the running for that one. And this is where I think Luka makes a statement. He's going to play great against Kawhi. He's going to play great against LeBron. But I think he's going to go to a level we have yet to see Luka go to at any point in his career against one of his best friends in Nikola Jokic. We saw that the issues Denver had against the Mavericks earlier this season when that great Kawhi left-handed hook shot from the foul line over Jokic went in. I mean, that was a great game. It's going to be close every single game, but Luka's going to do some incredible things. I know a lot of you guys who haven't been paying attention to the Mavericks, it's not just the additions of Washington and Gafford that have turned this thing around. It's been the reduction in minutes for Tim Hardaway Jr. It's been the increased defense of Luka Doncic for the entire season. Dante Exum panning out and being a fantastic on-ball defender when he's healthy and in the lineup, which he is right now. Maxey finally looks like he's healthy and he had his pinky toe kept popping out of place every time he got close to getting back on the floor, but he's finally healthy and has been for a significant stretch now. You look at Derrick Jones Jr., another great on-ball defender for Dallas. They need some scoring. I thought this team was a little light in scoring at that 3 spot after the trade deadline. P.J. Washington, however, over the last 3 or 4 weeks has certainly improved his offensive game for the Dallas Mavericks, and that center position really is the third scorer for them. So I really like the way Dallas looks heading into a matchup against the Denver Nuggets. So Denver side of things, Jamal Murray is a great number 2 with Nikola Jokic. You have Aaron Gordon still there, KCP, Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. did not have a good game. Pretty much the entire roster did not have a good game against the Dallas Mavericks. Credit the Mavericks defense, but I think some of that has to do with an off shooting night from a lot of their guys. This is not going to be a sweep. This is not going to be a gentleman's sweep. I think this game probably goes 6. I think Dallas wins it on their home floor. I would say this series goes 7, and I would say it would go 7 if it was actually on the Mavericks' home floor, if they had home court, because I think they would win in Game 7 on their home floor. But I think the Mavericks are ultimately going to be able to steal one in Denver, and I think they're going to win all their games at home. This is a fantastic lineup for the Dallas Mavericks, best roster construction that they had ever, and we'll see if Luka, Kyrie, and company can get the job done. Give me Dallas, give me Boston in the NBA Finals. Fantastic, fantastic series, both Western and Eastern Conference Finals. Now, as you guys know, I'm a Mavericks fan. I'm going to go ahead and say right now I'm picking Dallas. That's a heart pick. That's Luka pick. That's the improvements that we've seen from Dallas pick. On paper, Boston should win this matchup going away. We saw even after the trade deadline, Luka and company really struggle on the road in Boston to be able to win. And the series is going to start out in Boston. Boston's going to have home court here. I'm picking Dallas. I'm picking them in 6. I probably will be wrong, but I have to pick it. Logically, I'd probably say Boston in 7, but I'm picking Dallas in 6 and winning their second championship in franchise history. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. I know it's been a few months anyway since we were live, and we're going to be live for you guys again tomorrow night. As I mentioned, it's been quite an ordeal the last couple of months. Had a very close family member pass away, multiple illnesses with me, unfortunately. You guys can still hear it in my voice. But getting back on the mend, getting healthier, and we're going to be back to our live schedule. Probably not heavy in the beginning, probably do one every other day. That way I don't blow out my voice too soon. But we're going to be live for you guys again tomorrow. We're going to go over baseball tomorrow. I was really trying to get a baseball preview video out for you guys. And then we had a death in the family, and that's when my illnesses struck right at the beginning of the season. So my apologies for those of you who are hoping for a preview video. We'll get into the predictions that I had before the season, some of which look like great right now, some of them not so much. But we'll get into some of that tomorrow. I know quite a bit of my fan base comes from our baseball coverage, and I appreciate it. NHL playoffs are about to get underway. My Dallas Stars look to be the best team in the Western Conference. They could still win the President's Trophy, at least as of this morning. I'm not sure if that's still the case. New York Rangers look like they're going to lock that one down for best record in the NHL. But that's something you guys have to look forward as well, along with the NBA playoffs. WNBA draft, I believe, is tomorrow. We're not going to cover that one, but Caitlin Clark really showed us something in the WNBA, or showed us something in the tournament anyway, and she's going to be a force of nature. I think she'd be a great player in the NBA. Not saying she'd be Hall of Fame, but I am saying she is that talented. If you guys haven't seen her, check her out. She's unbelievable. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. We'll put out a video for you guys tomorrow. I'm going to do one video tomorrow. My voice is literally about to go. So we'll do that tomorrow morning and post it for you guys, probably around 10, 11 o'clock. Probably a baseball primer for you guys for those of who are joining us tomorrow. And get into some of our predictions for the season. We might even do a game tomorrow night as well. So appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Let us know who you guys have going to the NBA Finals, who you guys think wins it all, who's going to get out of the play-in. Do you think my predictions are right as far as some of the upsets that I picked? How many upsets did I pick anyway? I picked the Lakers. I picked the Mavericks in the first round. I picked the Pacers and 76ers in the first round. So about 50-50 chalk there versus underdogs. So should be a fascinating playoff run. Western Conference absolutely loaded from top to bottom. It's a pure crapshoot, honestly, in the West to see who ultimately is going to get there to the NBA Finals. Boston should be the team out of the East, as good as they've proven themselves to be all year long. If by some crazy circumstance, we'll put it that way, Joel Embiid decides to sit in the 7-8 game, and they rest their guys, and they say, hey, Miami, this spot is for you. You take it. Bring in Joel Embiid. I would not do this if I'm them. Like, playoffs are playoffs. If you lose the 7 game, you have to win the 8 or you're out. It would just be so fascinating if Joel Embiid and the 76ers faced the Boston Celtics in round 1. If that were to happen, I might have picked them to beat them in round 1, but I think they're just going to be able to solve their issues the later they get into the postseason, and if they meet in the conference finals, I think Boston should be able to handle that one. But if something crazy like that happened, I could see Philadelphia bouncing the best team by record anyway this season in the first round. So let us know who you guys have in the play-in, who you guys have going to the finals. Appreciate you guys joining us, and make sure that you guys hit that like on the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate those of you who have subscribed over the last couple of days. I know some of you have been watching some of our old content. We will have a whole bunch of new content coming your way this month. Appreciate all the support that you guys have given us. Mark, thank you guys for the well wishes as well. I know some of you were wondering what was going on with me. I let some of you guys know what was going on during our hiatus, and appreciate the sentiments that you guys sent to us, and getting us through a tough time for our family. So appreciate it, and looking forward to the NBA playoffs this year. Baseball coverage tomorrow, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Y'all have a good one.